Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jerry, and today I got my free agent grades. There's going to be a lot of these videos coming out with how hectic and crazy free agency has been, as it is every year. But for the first day, there's been something like, I think it's got to be over 40 or 50. Maybe I think it's over that now, but so many deals. So I'm going to try to take care of as many of them as I can here. This is not going to be the only video, so stay tuned for more. I'm going to try to get another one out today, and it'll probably be 2 or 3 tomorrow, and it'll just keep going on as more free agents get signed. So like, comment, subscribe, and let's get right into it with Kevin Byard. This one happened really early on. Originally, I had this at like a B minus, but then you start to see what the other safeties get paid, and I think if you're grading this for the Bears, they were paying Eddie Jackson about $15 million per year, and Kevin Byard has had better production in these past years, but he's also kind of been on a downward, trending downward as far as his play. Still did better last year than Eddie Jackson, so I think that's where you get the C plus. It's above average, but I would have liked to see the Bears go with a bit younger of a guy. They do have a very young secondary, and I think it helps to have a veteran in there. So I could probably argue myself back up into a B minus, but I gave it a C plus just because specifically it's not in this video, it'll be in the next one, but Geno Stone, who I really wanted, signed for the same price, so that kind of kept me in the C plus range. But 2 years, $15 million, $7.5 million average per year, ends up at a C plus for me. Russell Wilson, I gave this one an A. The only reason it's not an A plus is because I think Justin Fields would have been a better fit. I know they kind of already decided that wasn't going to happen. I like what Russ can do for them just because the Steelers are probably the most complete team that was going to be looking for a quarterback. Gives Kenny Pickett an opportunity to sit if you can still think that he's going to be the guy. Like I said, I think Justin Fields might have been a better guy moving forward, especially with a lot of their core is younger players. So when you have a younger core, it is nice to have a younger quarterback, or maybe next year they'd have to pay him or franchise tag him, so that would have been an interesting situation. But it's got to be either an A or an A plus because it's $1.2 million and the Broncos are paying the rest of it. So got to be an A for Russell Wilson. Great deal. But again, I still think Justin Fields would have been a better fit. Mitch Morris, I thought this was borderline A minus, mainly just for the price. He is older. The Bears just signed Ryan Bates, his backup, who did have playing time at center the previous year, and then mainly guard. But they signed him, and they're paying him $4 million a year. And so for the Jaguars to get 2 years of Mitch Morris, he's still going to be good for the next 2 years. I think they could draft or have like a younger backup, maybe learn from Mitch Morris and kind of lean into that role. So I do like Mitch Morris a lot, especially for $5.25 million. I think that's a great deal for him and fills a need of the Jaguars. So I give him a B plus. Jonah Jackson. This one is pretty expensive at 3 years, $51 million, but the Rams really needed to get better on the offensive line, help protect Matt Stafford, and if there is another quarterback that comes in years to come, I think having Jonah Jackson and helping build that offensive line is huge. So although I think the pay is probably about correct, maybe slightly over, I like filling the need for the Rams, and I like that they're taking care of that. So that's where the B grade comes in. I think you can always spend a little bit more in a place where you need to, and the Rams absolutely needed to. So it makes sense, and you got to spend the money. You can't take it all with you. Moving on, Landon Dickerson. I will advocate for a team and usually give them a boost for sticking with their guys and re-signing their current players over targeting somebody else unless that player really isn't that good or has significant problems. But I think this is an overpay for Landon Dickerson. We haven't seen what he's going to be like without Jason Kelce there, and we know Jason Kelce is a huge part of keeping that offensive line together. So paying him the 4-year, $84 million, $21 a year is a lot for a guard. So that's just why I'm not a huge fan of it. I guess they're probably factoring in that Lane Johnson's going to be gone one of these years, so you're going to lose his contract, and you're kind of filling in with Landon Dickerson coming in. But that's where the C minus comes from. Is just I think $21 million a year, $84 million is just too much for a guard. I think if this was closer to like 70 million, I think I'm probably giving this like a B plus, which, it's not a huge difference. But in a team like the Eagles, where they're kind of falling off, they just lost a big glue to their offensive line and center, and their performances just went down, especially towards the end of last season. I don't know if this is where I would have spent all my money. I guess obviously they didn't spend all of it with another signing that will be in the next video in Saquon Barkley, so look out for that. But anyway, yeah, Landon Dickerson's a C minus for me, just because I think they should have gotten a better deal, and I guess it's kind of a tough situation because if you don't sign him, who are you going to sign? 21 million just seems like a little bit too much for me, so we get a C minus. DeAndre Swift, first grade in the D's, I give him a D plus. I actually had him at a D minus and was borderline F because I am not a fan of DeAndre Swift. I don't think that he's a very good running back. I don't think he fills the hole very well, especially if you look at the Bears and then the Lions. DeAndre Swift was drafted by the Lions, obviously, was very mediocre, not very good at all. And then they got rid of him to sign David Montgomery last year from the Bears, and his contract was 3 years, $18 million, so $6 million a year. So now we got the guy that the Lions got rid of because he wasn't cutting it for him, and we're paying him $6.5 million more. So I really don't like this. You can say it fills a need for the Bears because they were only running with Khalil Herbert and Roschon Johnson, but DeAndre Swift just does not fill the gap enough for me to want to pay him $8 million. Actually, another one that we'll talk about in the next video is Antonio Gibson. I actually would have preferred him, especially at the contract. His was 3 years. I want to say it was only like $11 million. So if you could get a guy like Antonio Gibson to be a receiving back who's still a little bigger, I feel like that would have been a lot better value. And it's shown in the past that the running back, teams that pay the running back typically don't make it very far in the playoffs. So obviously that's not always going to be the case, but I just did not love this for DeAndre Swift to the Bears. So then he gets the D plus. Let's talk about another running back in Tony Pollard. Give him a C minus. I actually had him as a D minus as well, and I was trying to justify, where am I going to put him? And the thing that was weighing down Pollard for me at a D minus, because actually I like Pollard more than I like DeAndre Swift. I think Pollard's probably a better back, but I don't like the fit for Tennessee because they have Tajay Spears already, who's kind of a similar running back. So I don't really understand that there. So, I mean, I guess you would say that would, Jerry, why did you change it to a C minus? But the other thing that I was kind of factoring in when I looked at that was the Titans actually, towards the end of the year, had the last ranked offensive line. And I don't think Pollard's going to have much success because he was playing behind the Cowboys offensive line. Like I said, I do like Pollard more than Swift. So that's kind of where the C minus comes from is, he's a slightly cheaper and, in my opinion, better than DeAndre Swift. So therefore, he's got to have a little bit better of a grade. And I was trying to grade just the signing alone. If you wanted to factor in, the Titans not spending on offensive line and not going after somebody that has a bit of a different skill set from Tajay Spears, like you go for like a Gus Edwards, or the Bears had Donta Foreman, some sort of a larger power back. I could have understood that more, but to get somebody that's the same as a guy you already have in Tajay Spears, and it doesn't look like a good signing for me. Again, this you could definitely make an argument for D plus here, but I definitely think that Tony Pollard and DeAndre Swift were both overpaid in this case. I don't think they're worth the $8 million a year. And we'll see what happens. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think Pollard's going to do very well this year because he's going to be behind one of the worst offensive lines with, we don't know who quarterback's going to be. Even if it is Will Levis, it's not really that great. So I'm interested to see what happens, but I have Tony Pollard graded as a C minus in that trade. Michael Pittman, almost didn't put this in here. It is a signing. I was thinking about not doing the re-signings, but I ended up, I threw it in. Obviously, Landon Dickerson was in here as well as a re-sign from the Eagles. But This one I had a tough time. Again, I mentioned before that I am a little biased to, paying somebody that's been on the team. I think having the experience, being in the locker room, knowing how all that works, I think it does hold some value. So that's why I think it was good that they re-signed him, and that's where the grade gets bumped up, because I actually think this is a pretty huge overpay. 23.3 million just seems like a little bit too much for me. Yes, he was pretty reliable last season and he did play well. I just think it's a little much. I do like kind of a 3-year to where it seems like a lot of the deals, like if it would have been even like a little bit less, like 21, 22 million, but a 4 or 5 year deal, then I definitely would have had more of a problem. So only being a 3-year definitely helps, especially factoring in that like Anthony Richardson's going to be on his rookie contract until that point. So if it turns out, Pittman's falling off or something happens, you can always get out of that contract for when you need to pay Anthony Richardson, maybe draft a quarterback or whatever it is. So I like how that lined up. And although I do think it is a pretty decent overpay, it seemed like a lot of these were overpays. And I think that also could be because the cap went up. The cap went up like 30 million or whatever from last year. So naturally, everybody's going to they're going to ask for a little bit more. And it's actually better to look at the gauge of the contract based on the percentage of salary cap. I talked about that a little bit. Landon Johnson video, I talked about that and about how he I expected him to get about 10% of the cap, which was going to be around 24 to 25 million, and he ends up getting 19.8 million. So that didn't really follow the mold there, but other than that, a lot of the contracts have been a little bit higher. We talked about DeAndre Swift and Tony Pollard making more than David Montgomery. I think Montgomery's better than both of them, but that's just because the cap went up. So Michael Pittman gets a C+. I think he was overpaid, but I like him staying on the team, and I like the length. Dion Dawkins, C-, overpay, especially with what the Bills were doing. They got rid of like 3 or 4 of their defensive guys that were actually like significant and a big help for the team. So to re-sign a guy like Dawkins, it seems, again, I do like the re-signing the guy to the same team, but 20 million a year seemed like a little too much for me. And you got to protect Josh Allen, but on the other hand, I don't like the 20 million a year is just too much. That's kind of the bottom line. I think they could have gotten somebody for less, and the way you kind of have to look at it, and again, I tried to make all the grades not factoring in other moves that were made, but at the end of the day, they did cut a couple of their stars in order to re-sign Dion Dawkins, and that's where I don't know if that was worth it. I think the money might have been better used re-signing even just one of those defensive guys that they let go, whether it be Poyer, Tre'Davious White. I saw they just not too long ago, AJ Espin, I can't say his name, but the edge rusher on the Bills, he just re-signed for a small contract. But I would have liked to see one of the other defensive weapons stay around rather than Dion Dawkins, so it gets a C-. Again, I like keeping your guy, but I think it's a bit of an overpay. Jonathan Grenard, this one I actually had as a C-, and I just changed it to a D+, just because I think it's a lot of money. I think he's a good player. And again, I think another case of me kind of factoring in what else is going to happen, because the signs point to Danielle Hunter being gone. And I think it would have, like, even if Danielle Hunter, for example, if it's 25 million a year, I'd rather pay him that than 19 million a year for Grenard. So I like them filling that hole, but that's just, it's a lot of money for a guy who hasn't been super proven. He's done pretty good, and he's been a guy, and I'm not going to try to discredit Jonathan Grenard, and I'm glad that he got paid, but I just think that the 4-year 76 is too much money for him right now. I even would have liked to see like a 3-year 50 or something like that. I think probably would have been a better deal. 17 million a year. Not a huge difference, but for me and what I've seen of Grenard, he hasn't proved himself enough to earn the almost 20 million a year. Also have to look at he was last year, he was across from Will Anderson, who you could argue they were both helping each other, but if Danielle Hunter doesn't get re-signed, which it doesn't look like the Vikings are going to have the money for, especially depending on what they do quarterback wise, and they got to pay Justin Jefferson, so if they don't retain Danielle Hunter, which it's not looking like they're going to, I don't know if Grenard's going to have as much of an effect as they want. I think he'd be a better accessory to another edge rusher. So I give him a D plus. I think it's a position of need, but that's really all it's got going for him. So yeah, D plus for Grenard to the Vikings for me. Gabe Davis gets a C minus. I moved this one around. I was trying to determine where am I going to put it. At one point I had a C plus. At one point I had a D plus. Just kind of going back and forth and reviewing everything. I don't like that he's basically getting wide receiver 1 money, and to me he hasn't proved that he's a set in stone wide receiver 1. He's been a very flashy wide receiver 2, but I just don't love $20 million a year for Gabe Davis, and I don't. It's that also makes it look like Calvin Ridley's going to go, which I didn't really factor this into the grade, but if I don't think Gabe Davis can be your guy. Oddly enough, in the picture, he actually kind of looks like Mike Evans. Mike Evans, that would be, I think, a good contract. But it's not Mike Evans. That is Gabe Davis. So I'm giving it a C minus. Again, I think Jaguars probably need that deal. And I guess if you want to look at it this way, Calvin Ridley's probably going to make more money than that. I think this grade goes down to like a D plus or even a D if it turns out Calvin Ridley gets the same or a little bit lower contract. So, yeah, they get a little younger at the position, but I don't. That's another one. I don't think Gabe Davis has necessarily proved it enough, so he gets a C minus going to the Jaguars. Christian Wilkins, big fat contract for Christian Wilkins. Now he's a guy. He's awesome, great player. I wanted him to the Bears. 4-year, $110 million contract is a lot of money, making him the second highest paid interior defensive lineman behind. What's his name? Chris Jones. And I believe Aaron Donald's up there. I don't remember where he fits in, but I did see the stat that said Christian Wilkins is the second highest paid, which 27.5 a year is just too much for me. I actually had this at a B minus because I really am scared at the thought of Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby being on the same defensive line, because they are both going to wreak havoc, and it's going to be nuts for them. But the other thing is, like, they have Devontae Adams, who's not getting any younger. They really don't know what they're doing at quarterback, which this will be in a later video too. Gardner Minshew just signed over there to compete with Aiden O'Connell, so there's that part of it. But now they lost Josh Jacobs, so I guess Zamir White is going to be their guy, but I don't know if you can trust that enough. So I like them getting better on defense, but for me, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for invested in their defense, and we'll see what happens. But I didn't like this one as much as I originally did. Again, you kind of get overwhelmed by the scary, oh man, it's going to be Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby. And then you look at the money and you go, that's a lot of money, and he had a great year last year, but is he really worth that? So he gets a C plus for me going to the Raiders. Again, I think it's a good fit, and I think it works. It's just a lot of overpaying going on so far. And again, I mentioned cap space went up, so it's natural that the prices are going to go up, but it just seems a little excessive still. So let me know what you think down below. Am I wrong about anything? Is there any grades that you would change? I was being a bit of a hater on DeAndre Swift. I've never really been a fan. So let me know if you're a big fan of DeAndre Swift and you think that he's just going to light it up for the Bears, because as a Bears fan, that would be good news. But comment any of that down below. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, and have a great day.